Thank you, Senator Ludlam. Senator Paterson.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. And can I add my congratulations to you and warm wishes to you on the last occasion in which you'll sit in the chair in this chamber, and again place on the record my thanks for your service and friendship in my short time here in the Senate.
Thank you, Senator Paterson.
I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to rise tonight, even at this late hour, to contribute to the debate on the Broadcasting Legislation Amendment Bill. One of the first inquiries that I sat on when I first joined the Senate a little bit over a year ago was the Environment and Communications Legislation Committee's inquiry into a previous iteration of this bill. I participated with Senator Urquhart and enjoyed listening to her questions, and I noted some of the themes of her questions about that package back then being reiterated in the contribution by Senator O'Neill tonight, which I'll come to in a moment. I'm also now a member of the Senate Select Committee with Senator Ludlam on public interest, on the future of public interest journalism, which I think it should be described in the fairest way possible as the most elaborate fig leaf exercise for the Labor Party to cover up their lack of support for media reform. But nonetheless, hopefully it will, despite that, still produce some positive and useful outcomes. Firstly, I want to acknowledge Senator Ludlam's contribution to this debate because it was a thoughtful and nuanced contribution. And unlike Senator O'Neill's contribution, the words Fairfax and 10 did pass Senator Ludlam's lips. It was as if Senator O'Neill was commenting about the Australian media landscape as it was 5 years ago, as if she is unaware of all the developments that have happened in the media industry in recent years and how dire things are for media companies and how vital and urgent action now is. And I want to particularly single out and recognise a comment that Senator Ludlam made towards the end of his contribution, where he admitted that not only is the 75% reach rule clearly outdated in a modern media landscape and we should move on from it, but that he could envisage a time, and it might only be, I think he said 5 to 10 years away, where the 2 out of 3 rule will also become redundant. I agree with him, although I think that time is now. And I worry if Senator Ludlam was here in this parliament as the transition was taking place between the horse and buggy and the motor car, he said we can't yet remove those regulations protecting horses and buggies because they might still be around for another 5 or 10 years, and we better wait until they're really off the scene before we change the regulation. But I'll come to the more substantive comments about that in a moment. I just want to return to Senator O'Neill's contribution to the debate tonight because I think it was extraordinary in a number of ways. One of the ways in which he characterised this media reform package is, and I quote, a pro-industry package. I agree, this is a pro-industry package, and what Australia needs is a pro-industry package. And if we follow her contribution through to its logical conclusion, the Labor Party, in proposing to vote against this package, is anti-media industry. They don't want a pro-industry package to pass through this parliament. It echoed the spectacular contribution made by the Shadow Communications Minister Michelle Rowland in an interview with Kieran Gilbert on Sky News earlier this week, when it was put to her that all the media organisations in Australia were in favour of this bill, and wasn't that a reason why Labor should consider supporting it? She said, well, they're only supporting it because there's something in it for all of them. Ooh. Well, yes, indeed, there is something in it for all of them. It will improve their ability to compete with their new competitors and international competitors. It will improve their viability, and it may stave off or even prevent the collapse of a number of media companies. So indeed it is a pro-industry package, and it is indeed true to say, as Michelle Rowland did, that all the media companies get something out of it. Now, Senator O'Neill also said that the Labor Party was willing to support this bill on the condition that the 2 out of 3 rule abolition was removed from the bill. It is an interesting position to take for a party which is complaining that the media reform package is not sufficiently comprehensive and is piecemeal. So the Labor Party's only suggestion to improve a package which they think is not sufficiently comprehensive and is piecemeal is to make it less comprehensive and more piecemeal by removing a fairly fundamental part of the package. They said what they want is true media reform and over and again comprehensive media reform, and yet they've proposed absolutely nothing that would fit that definition, nothing which would resemble that in any way. The truth is that the only media reform package that is on the table in this debate, in this parliament, is the one that the government has proposed. There are no alternatives, none have been provided. We're promised that there might be some alternatives in the future, but the time to act is now. The time to act is not going to be in a few months' time or a few years' time when one of the Australian media companies that we have all come to love and cherish falls over. Senator O'Neill and other Labor speakers in these debates are concerned about the impact of the 2 out of 3 rule on democracy, on diversity, and how it may lead to consolidation. They are right. It is true. If the 2 out of 3 rule is removed, there may be consolidation in the Australian media industry. In fact, it's quite likely there will be some consolidation in the media industry. But if I had to choose between consolidation in the media industry that took place because old, outdated regulations was removed, companies which had common interests chose to merge or take each other over and restructure their affairs that made them more efficient and allowed them to continue operating, or the alternative, which would be consolidation by collapse, consolidation by the media companies in Australia falling over, I know which choice I would make. It's a fairly easy choice for me. I understand perhaps if this was a debate in the late 1990s, the concern about diversity, but the truth is we are living in an age of golden media diversity, a golden age of media diversity. The diverse sources of news and media and comment and information that I can access now are better than any human has in any point in history. I can get every opinion under the sun at the click of a button. The perspectives and the takes on Australian politics, on international affairs, on business are more varied than they have ever been. So to hold up the 2 out of 3 rule as this great protector of media diversity in an age of a golden age of media diversity, I think is incredibly naive and out of touch with reality. It's so perverse that if you were a media company today, or if you're advising a media company today, let's take Fairfax as an example, and the 2 out of 3 rule was an obstacle to you structuring your company in a more efficient way that would allow the ongoing viability of your company. The best advice that you could give them would be to stop printing newspapers. If I was advising The Age, if it was my commercial duty to advise them, I would tell them, stop printing newspapers, deliver The Age on an iPad, deliver The Age online, and you'll be able to arrange your affairs in any way you see fit. You'll be able to merge with a television company or any other company in the media industry. But if you continue to print the daily newspaper, which is of great value to some people and still in this day and age, and which employs many people, well then all you're doing is tying your own hands behind your back and preventing yourself from structuring affairs in the most efficient way. The truth is, of course, it's not The Age or any other media business that's tying their own hands behind their back. It's the Parliament and the laws of this nation that are tying their hands behind their back, and we have the capacity to address that in this bill. It is often said that the internet, and particularly the arrival of Google and Facebook, is destroying the viability of traditional media. And that may be true to some extent. It certainly has taken away what once was the so-called rivers of gold in terms of classified advertising that propped up the media model for many years. But we in this place are aiding and abetting that, wittingly or unwittingly, by allowing companies like Google and Facebook, who, by the way, I think are wonderful companies and provide excellent services, and I'm not a constant critic like some in this debate, but who nevertheless have an extraordinary commercial advantage granted to them by the regulatory holiday we effectively give them at the expense of Australian media companies. We tie up Australian television networks, Australian print media companies, and of course radio businesses with regulation that we could never and would never apply to these companies. The only thing we can really do if we wish to give them the best fighting chance, the most even playing field, is to remove this outdated regulation. So those who come to this place and say, perhaps posturing to the press gallery, perhaps posturing to their friends in the gallery, gee, isn't it terrible what Google and Facebook are doing to you? I'm on your side, I'm here for you. Doubt their sincerity, doubt it greatly, because if they do that at the same time opposing this package, then what they are doing is voting to make, in relative terms, the Googles and Facebooks of the world much stronger in contrast to Australian media companies. Also doubt the sincerity of people who come into this place and say that they really sincerely want stronger controls on gambling advertising, and they want to make sure that children are not exposed to gambling advertising during live sport. Because it is only through this package that that issue will be addressed. And it is important features of this package that have been subject to some criticism in earlier contributions to this debate, in particular the licence fee reductions, which allow that to happen. Because, of course, given that we know the strains and stresses that television companies in particular are under, if we remove from them gambling advertising, which is a significant source of revenue, and did not compensate them in any way by also removing or reducing licence fees, then we would put them under even greater strain and risk their collapse even sooner than perhaps might otherwise be the case. So if you are sincere about ensuring that gambling advertising doesn't take place and children are not exposed to it, then it only logically flows that you must make it possible for that to happen by supporting licence fee reductions, which are a key feature of this bill. Also doubt the sincerity of people who come into this place and say they are friends of regional media. I remember very well participating in the Environment and Communications Committee's inquiry into this, a bill like this a bit over a year ago, how the regional media companies in particular were crying out for legislation to fix the situation that they were in, who were desperately asking us to act to help them stave off their financial difficulties. We still haven't done so, and the pressure continues to mount on those businesses. And for people who say that they want viable local regional media to continue to exist, there is really only one option for them today, and that is to support this bill. In the absence of doing so, they will ensure perhaps that they don't merge with a larger metropolitan ally or competitor, but they will also ensure that they close on their own terms in just a matter of months. Finally, two final points in this vein. You certainly doubt the sincerity of someone who says they're a friend and a fan of the Australian media landscape and uniquely Australian voices in the media landscape, because we know that one of the potential buyers for Fairfax Media is a foreign company, is a foreign investor, and who knows what they would do with Fairfax Media if they were successful in taking them over. And I should say again, I'm not a critic of foreign investment in any sphere of the Australian economy. I think it's an overwhelmingly positive thing, and I can envisage foreign investment in the Australian media which would be very positive. But there are other people in this chamber who would swear black and blue that foreign investment in Australian media is a very dangerous thing. But by blocking this legislation, all they are doing is ensuring that the only viable potential bidders for a company like Fairfax are those foreign bidders who are not encumbered by the fact that they already have an Australian presence in other media industries here. If you want to ensure that a company like Fairfax ultimately is taken over or merged with another Australian player rather than a foreign investor, then the best thing to do is to support this legislation. Finally, doubt the sincerity of people who come into this place and say that they are fans of private media and that they want to see a healthy commercial media landscape in Australia, because the effect of this bill not passing will be the continued consolidation of that private media, the continued shrinking of that private media, and the only thing that will exist in its place, or the thing which will come much more relatively large in that space, is of course the state-funded, government-funded media. So when people come in here and use their maiden speeches to rail against the ABC or SBS, people who use estimates to be critical of those organisations, but at the same time fail to support this kind of legislation, all they're doing is aiding the continual decline of private media and effectively increasing the influence of state media. I'd now like to turn to some of the key provisions of this bill. The key elements of the package are, of course, as I've mentioned, abolition of broadcast licence fees for television and radio, which allows them to better compete with other media platforms. The introduction of a price for the use of spectrum by broadcasters that better reflects its use. Protecting Australian children by banning gambling advertising during sports broadcasts in children's viewing hours. Amendments to the anti-siphoning scheme and list. Broad-ranging and comprehensive review of the Australian and children's content. A $30 million funding package for subscription television to support the broadcasting of women's and niche sports. What these reforms will do is ensure that the ongoing production of high-quality Australian content and also strengthen the competitiveness of Australia's broadcasting sector. It also acknowledges the increasing competition that the broadcasting sector faces, and includes important new measures such as new gambling advertising restrictions, will place pressure on broadcasters and must therefore be compensated for. The government's decision to abolish broadcast licensing fees, as I mentioned earlier, and also to make sure that the new restrictions on gambling advertising apply to all platforms, free-to-air, subscription and online, are a recognition of the pressure that they are under. These changes in fees are significant reforms for the broadcasting industry, and they build on the media reforms that we have already announced and are currently before the Parliament, which look to abolish the 2 out of 3 rule and the 75% reach rule. I like to particularly single out in this area a point that's been really well made in current and previous inquiries by the TV broadcasters, that the licence fees they pay in Australia by world standards are incredibly high. It's certainly true that prior to the hopeful passage of this legislation, they haven't paid anywhere near a market rate for the spectrum that they use, but they've paid very significant licence fees, far in excess of most similar countries, and in fact many countries in the world have no licence fees at all. It's important that we recognise that these licence fees are in fact a relic of an analogue media era and can no longer be justified in an increasingly competitive media environment. The idea that a television station should pay a licence fee for the privilege of reaching Australians, when a company like Facebook can stream and does stream live content to Australians and pay no licence fee, is obviously incredibly anachronistic and out of date. Broadcasters are effectively caught in this pincer movement. Their revenues are flat or declining in real terms, as many advertisers are migrating online. And the on-demand services, which again I think is a really positive development that most Australian consumers are very pleased about, also draw audiences away from this traditional broadcast content. Simultaneously, costs are rising, and the capacity of broadcasters to contain that further cost growth will be severely limited given their need to invest in programming and technology across multiple media platforms. That's why the government is moving to abolish broadcast licensing fees, which amount to about $130 million per year, starting with the payment that would be payable in December 2017. But importantly, they are a key element of this package of reforms, this comprehensive package of reforms, and absent support for the full package of these reforms, those licence fee reductions may not be able to happen. The spectrum pricing, I think, is a really important improvement in the way in which television stations pay for the actual public resource that they use, which is of course spectrum. The new spectrum price for television and radio will be set at a total of around $40 million, and the first payment is due to be made in 2017-18. Unlike broadcast licensing fees, the spectrum fee is not based upon revenue. Rather, the price takes into account the type of transmitter used, the amount and type of spectrum used and its location. This is a similar approach to which applies to other spectrum users and appropriately recognises what is that public resource that they are using. Overall, the vast majority of broadcasters will pay considerably less in spectrum fees than they currently pay in licence fees. This fee relief will enable broadcasters to better compete with other online competitors, invest in their businesses and produce Australian content. However, a small number of broadcasters will face a net increase in overall charges, and the government will support these broadcasters to ensure they are no worse off by providing a 5-year transition support package. There are certainly another part of this package which I really welcome is the changes to the anti-siphoning scheme Analyst. My own view is that having a quarantine list of sporting events and other events that can only be broadcast and only be bid initially by free-to-air TV networks is going to look seriously out of date in a few years' time when many international sporting events start to be brought up, as has already happened, such as with the FA Cup final and the US Masters Golf. So I think it's very appropriate that the government starts to recognise this and appropriately open up more sports to competitive bidding and allow them to be broadcast on a range of platforms, including subscription television. I think it's particularly important when the difference between subscription television station becomes, as technology evolves, increasingly a very fine difference with other television stations. When Foxtel, for example, is offering an increasing amount of its content through apps like Foxtel Go, an increasing number of their users are accessing it, how different are they really to a business like Netflix or a business like Stan? To conclude, I'd just like to return to the fact that these reforms are supported by an extraordinary consensus across the media industry. Greg Hywood was appearing before the Public Interest Journalism Committee, and I asked him, in his experience of more than 40 years in the media industry, had he ever seen a consensus like this? And of course he said no. There's never been consensus in the media industry like this before, and to miss this opportunity would be a very sad thing. So I hope that all parties in this place consider their positions carefully and ultimately support the government's position.
Thank you, Senator Paterson.